I'm Kathleen from Roots and Boots, and I want to show you how I prune and tie up my tomatoes. So this row is already completed. I pruned all the lower branches and then I tied them to the trellis. There are a few tomatoes that weren't quite tall enough to tie up, but most of these plants are tied up. And then this second row of tomatoes right here, you can see how bushy it is. This is what the first row looked like before I pruned and tied them up. So I'm going to show you the process of, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I just prune off all the lower branches about 18 inches-ish, and then as they become tall enough, I tie them to these cattle panels. And then as they continue to grow, I will continue the process, just rinse and repeat. I will continue to prune off suckers as they get taller, and I will continue to tie them onto the trellis and kind of weave them in and out as I'm able. So here's the first one as an example. You can see I trimmed off all of the branches on the lower part, and then I cut up old t-shirts into strips and I use those. These are actually from last year. I'm recycling them and I just start tying them up. This one I was able to tie to the T-post, but then I tied to the first rung of the cattle panel. I also wanted to show you how to prune out the suckers. The suckers are the little branches that come between the main vine and one of the downward branches. This is a sucker, and so I would snip that off. Sometimes you can do it with your fingernails. That is a process that I will continue as the tomatoes grow, like throughout the summer. Well, what would happen if I didn't prune my tomatoes at all? So you don't have to. Either way, you're going to get tomatoes. The reason why I like to prune the lower part of my tomato vines and prune out the suckers as they continue to grow is because it allows for increased airflow. I just feel like it helps the tomato plants stay healthier. When they're all bushy, first of all, it's hard to see what's going on in there. It makes it harder to harvest the tomatoes, and also it just can lead to more like disease problems with the tomato leaves because they're all so close together and they have a harder time drying out if they get wet. And so let me show you the difference between, I've got about, I don't know, 6 or 7 plants that are pruned now, and then the rest of the row that are still quite bushy. Okay, so these are the plants that I've just pruned. This is still all the pruning that I need to clean up. But you can see, now I can see the tomatoes. I can see what's going on here with my vines. You can see right now it's kind of windy and there's a lot more air flow through the leaves, as opposed to these plants are still very bushy. I can't see what's going on in there. I'm not even sure which is the main stem, and the leaves are just all close together, and some of them are even laying on the ground, and they're starting to root where they're laying on the ground, and it just keeps things a lot more tidy to prune them and train them vertically. And so this is where I've landed in more recent years. believe it or not, this is the same row. I have finished pruning all the plants and tying them up. It might seem kind of extreme, and you might feel hesitant to take so much off each plant, but I always like to picture in my mind what it's going to be like, you know, a month from now, 2 months from now. If I don't prune all of that off, it is just going to be a tomato jungle, and I'm always so glad to get all of that extra growth out. And also it allows the plant to focus its energy on the little baby tomatoes that are already growing along that main stem, and to make bigger and better tomatoes. Instead of spreading its energy out over so many branches, it can concentrate on that main stem. And that's how I prune and trellis my tomatoes. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy tomato growing.